Hey guys, remember the mid-season premiere of The Flash, Season 3, Episode 9, Borrowing Problems from the Future, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, but as you guys know, really have been very up and down with this season so far. I think some things have been truly great, like the Killer Frost arc, and like the direction of, like HR, things like that. I've really liked things like that, but then things like Savitar and things like that just really haven't been that great, and I really didn't know where they were taking the show. And after this episode, I still don't know where they're taking the show, because this, to me, while there was some interesting stuff, this was quite a very low energy premiere. In fact, it didn't feel at all like a mid-season premiere. There were a few things in there that they tried to make it feel like a mid-season premiere, but this really did not work at all. It was quite rushed. I think there was a little bit too much going on. The main storyline, I really did not give a shit about, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm slowly losing interest in The Flash, and I think it's because Supergirl, Arrow, and Legends are just a lot better. There's a lot more interesting stuff going on there. The Flash, there's just not really a ton going on that's really keeping me all that interested. There definitely is stuff that happened this episode that I liked, but in general, I just don't really think they know what to do with this show anymore. Really, to me, seems like they're dragging it out, and that they don't really have much of a thorough line. But let's just get in this episode, because I do want to talk about overall. So we start off with Barry. He's seeing the vision of Savitar killing Iris, and it turns out it's actually a nightmare he has while sleeping. As he and Iris are in bed, he tells her to go back to sleep, but Iris presses him to talk about it. They seem to be quite intimate, clearly having sex and things like that, and their phones ring. They get an alert that a fire is in progress. Iris mentions that Wally is going to beat Barry to the scene, and Barry speeds off, gets the scene, he and Wally meet, and finally the fire is actually trapped in a room. So yes, these two are now working together, and Barry realizes that the fire will expand. It will expand if they don't open the door. So Barry creates a vortex to suck the fire out a window and go in to save everyone. And I thought it was an okay scene, but it kind of just felt like it was there just to give these two something to work on. It felt very random that these two are working together all of a sudden. We haven't seen Barry and Wally work together at all. I mean, obviously, we know that Wally hasn't really needed the train because he's a lot faster than Barry. But seeing his Kid Flash and seeing Barry work together, it just felt really anticlimactic. It really did. It didn't really feel like this was something that we've been building up to. It just kind of felt like it happened. And they head back to Star Labs. Wally mentions something about kicking ass, and Cisco overhears him, gets a bit snippy about how being superheroes aren't about kicking ass, which I actually like that Cisco put him in his place, because yeah, Wally is way too confident. He really thinks this is going to be a breeze, and I don't really think he knows the road that he's in for. And I will say it's been one of the stronger plots this season, is that Wally has been a lot more tolerable. But you can understand this. He thinks that he's just there to kick ass, and there's a lot more to it than that, as we know. So while at Star Labs, we see Caitlin actually makes mention to Cisco that her wristbands aren't working and keeps dying. And so at Star Labs, Caitlin keeps making mention to Cisco that her wristbands are working and they keep dying. And we see Wally walk in the police department, and the gentleman they saved from the fire earlier is talking to a police detective about how the Kid Flash seems to be slower than the Flash. And basically, Wally overhears everything and shows a frown on his face. And wait a second, I thought that he was faster than the Flash. I mean, this just isn't really making a ton of sense. And back at Star Labs, HR gives the group a tour of the museum that he's creating, and I really do love HR. I love how animated he is. I love how just enthusiastic he is about everything. He definitely is one of the highlights of this season, and Tom Cavanaugh is just doing such a great job with playing such a wacky character. I mean, the difference between this Wells and the other Wells, that this Wells gives him a lot more creative liberties to just do whatever the hell he wants. Do improv or write, throw it in. It goes with HR. Say something weird, HR will do it. There's just so much more freedom that he has to act, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. And he shows the group he's made a hologram as Cisco to use as a tour guide, and needless to say, Cisco is not happy about this because it doesn't at all sound like him, and Cisco didn't really give him the approval to do this, so Cisco really is not too pleased with him doing that. But Caitlin then goes to visit Julian at the police station, and this by far, to me, was the most interesting part of the episode. I've really liked Caitlin's arc all season, and this was no exception. She asked for his help with getting rid of her powers, things that she needs to get rid of her powers before she hurts someone else, because she already knows the damage that she can do, and she knows that, she was going to kill Barry in that episode, and that she was, willing to do it, and her wristbands start beeping. She runs out in the hallway as we see her eyes turn white, and as they've done in the past while she was Killer Frost. So she's terrified. I like that Caitlin doesn't like these powers, because no, they're not good. She plugs in her wristband to a power source, hinting that her powers might be uncontrollable if the wristbands are dead, so she needs to find a way to get rid of those powers and, rid herself of that evil within her, because she doesn't want to turn out like Killer Frost does. She doesn't want to be a supervillain. She wants to be good. She wants to be on Barry's side and Cisco's side. She wants to be on their team. She doesn't want to be on the villain side, and I like the way that Julian is really helping her with that. So Barry and Iris, Barry surprises her by unpacking some of their goods. Iris approaches him again about nightmares he's been having. Barry's phone then starts sending an alert. It's a robbery in progress, and Barry goes to the jewelry scene. He finds out it's being robbed by Jared Murillo, who, yes, we do have a speedster we're dealing with in this episode, and it's about as interesting as sliced bread, really. I mean, this was so boring, I have to say, and they did what they could to try to connect him to the story, but I just didn't care. I'm so over them doing the Speedster of the Week or Metahuman of the Week. I get it that that's what The Flash started out as, but the show needs to evolve at some point, and it really is not doing that really at all. So Team Flash gathers to discuss the new robber who escaped on a motorcycle, and Barry has a quick flashback to the previous timeline where the news reports are talking about Murillo, and he connects the two that Murillo is now in this current timeline due to Flashpoint, and this was just dumb. It really was. The fact that, again, this is an effective Flashpoint. Fucking everything's an effective Flashpoint this season. It's really dumb, honestly. Can we have one thing that just happens because it's happening, not just because of Flashpoint? It just seems like that's the only reason they have, that everything is because of Flashpoint. Why is Cisco, why is Dante there? Because of Flashpoint. Why is Killer Frost there? Because of Flashpoint. Hell, why did Barry have a tuna sandwich instead of a cheese sandwich? Because of Flashpoint. I don't know. Little things like that, honestly, I would not be surprised if that's the truth. If Barry normally wants a cheese sandwich, but now he wants a tuna sandwich because of Flashpoint. It's just dumb. It really is dumb, and it really is starting to piss me off, because Flashpoint they could have used a lot better, and it's just dumb that everything that happens is a direct result of Flashpoint. But Caitlin then finds her way back to the police department where we see her consoling down Julian about the actions he did under Savitar's sway. And I like that Julian's really down on himself, and that he really doesn't know if he's ready to join Team Flash, because he wasn't a good guy. He was a villain. He listened to Savitar, and Caitlin suggests he joins Team Flash at Star Labs, and Julian actually declines. He actually is not into this idea at all. But I like that Julian is a good guy. That's something I've really liked about this season, is that Julian is not, just some villain. He actually does have a heart. He cares about what he's doing. He knows what he did is wrong, and I like the direction they're going with. I think definitely his stuff was the best stuff in this episode. It really made up for how, not boring, but just uninteresting the rest of the stuff was. But Barry approaches Wells back at Team Flash headquarters. He asks him whether he believes in a fixed future or an ever-changing future, and HR tells Barry he thinks the future is always fixed, which, with Cisco chimes in and says that another robbery is in progress, and obviously, Barry's talking about this because he knows that Iris is possibly going to die, and he wants wherever he can to change that. And for him saying that's a fixed future, that's not something to say in front of Barry Allen, who changes fucking everything every season. I mean, every season has ended with him going back to save his mother. How many times is he going to go back and save his mother? Now it's going to be him going back to save Iris. And you know that whenever he does this, he's just going to make things worse. And it seems like the show is just kind of running itself into a corner at this point. Like, they're just doing what they can to get Barry in trouble, and it's just, there's so many places you can go with that, but after a while, there's just so many things you can do, and it starts to get very tiring, and it already is getting quite tiring, I have to say. So Barry rushes in, he finds Murillo in the middle of another robbery. Murillo seems to have special bullets that are able to case Barry, and he eventually evades them only to see Wally show up, take Murillo under control. A bystander's recording a video. Wally looks in the camera, introduces himself as Kid Flash, and they return to Star Labs, and the atmosphere is jovial. Everyone's high-fiving, hugging, and congratulating Wally on stopping Murillo, but Barry dampers the mood as he reminds Wally that he's supposed to be shadowing, that he's just supposed to be doing what the Flash is. He's not supposed to be doing his own thing. And I don't know. I don't really care. I just don't care about this storyline, honestly. I want to care, but the direction this is going, with Barry being like, oh, you're not following my orders, people saying that Barry's a douche, yeah, I'm getting it now. I'm really getting the sense that Barry's kind of a douche. I mean, I get it that, yeah, the show mentioned it, but Barry is kind of a douche in this sense. I mean, Wally is not doing at all what Barry's telling him to do. But in this case, he shouldn't be. He's more advanced than the Flash. He should be doing his own thing. He wants to be a superhero. Let him be a superhero. He doesn't have to be your shadow. I don't know why Barry was so defensive about it, but on his way out, Joe tells Barry that whatever the reason he has for ragging on Wally, to please get over it. And we know, of course, it's about Iris, but again, you just don't get that sense that this is justified what Barry is doing and that it's really warranted what he's doing. It just kind of feels like they just did this so Barry can be a dick to Wally and that Joe can just give him this pep talk, because again, that's one of the strong things of the show. But Joe, as I mentioned, has almost nothing to do in this entire episode. I forgot that Joe was actually there just because he had really nothing to do, but we go upstairs to the grand opening of the Star Labs Museum. No one has shown up, and a couple walks in. HR tries getting admittance fees out of them, and as the Cisco hologram starts faulting out, the couple rushes out of the museum just because they're not all interested, and Julian then walks in, says he accepts Caitlin's offer to join Team Flash, and we see Barry, Caitlin, Wally, Iris, and Cisco. They're downstairs having a private conversation about the ramifications of Julian joining Team Flash, because they really don't know if it's the best idea, and I like that they did make this an executive decision, but Caitlin reminds the group that Julian hasn't revealed Barry's role as the Flash yet. Barry takes Iris into the secret room the Reverse Flash kept and shows Iris the newspaper he always checks to see if the future changes. And here's where we get to something that I thought was way too rushed. Because, yeah, I understand that Barry's eventually going to tell Iris what's going on, but him telling her this early just feels completely rushed, and it feels like the show's just doing that to avoid conflict, and I'm not entirely sure why. I think Barry hiding the secret from Iris would actually be a good plot, but the show is avoiding conflict, and Barry reveals what he's been having nightmares about, the possible future where Savitar murders Iris, and Iris reminds Barry that he threw the Philosopher's Stone in the Speed Force, and there's a general uneasy feeling in the room that he actually, that he threw it in there, and that he possibly caused her death, and Barry reassures Iris that she's safe, even going to length of saying that he bets on his parents' lives that he'll protect her. He knows that he will do whatever he can to save her. But again, this is Barry talking, who messes up everything, so you really can't validate anything that he's saying. But Barry and Iris share the future in which the latter's murdered with Wally, Cisco, Caitlin, and Wells, and they all agree that they won't tell Joe for the immediate future, obviously. So Wells uses Cisco's dominoes to use an analogy with the group. He says, imagine each domino is a moment in time. Each domino hits the next, leading to an inevitable future. They could conceivably change the future where they end up, but they have to be careful about which events they alter. And Cisco decides to buy Barry into the future. The two walk through the future together. They tell the rest of the group what they're seeing, including various TV headlines and reports, and also in the future, Wells has a rifle pointed at Savitar. The last time Barry was in the future, Wells' HR wasn't there, so that tells the group that the future has already changed. So Cisco and Barry leave the vibe. Wally speeds in to tell Barry the Plunder has escaped, and Barry thinks back to his future to see what store Plunder will hit up next. Barry tells Wally to suit up. The latter is very hesitant about the brief outburst that Barry previously had, which is understandable. I mean, Barry literally said, be my shadow, but Barry apologized, the two suit up, and again, I don't feel like, I just don't feel like Barry was actually sorry. Like, he just kind of said, oh, I'm sorry, so they can go on this mission. But they suit up, they race off to stop Murillo from his next heist, and as Wally confronts Murillo, he gets shot with a blazer shot and stops to take a breather, and after a brief word of encouragement from Barry, Wally decides the two should further the pursuit with Murillo, and while in pursuit, he fires all sort of futuristic gadgets towards the speedsters, including a hologram wall. They stop Murillo and handcuff him as a crowd approaches chanting Kid Flash's name, and again, I just didn't care. I don't care about Murillo. I don't care that Kid Flash saved the day. It didn't really matter to me. But Team Flashback and Star Labs watching news report about the arrest of Murillo. Barry looks to the group. He acknowledges that if they can fix one future, they can fix them all. And again, it's Barry talking, so there's nothing about this that actually makes me feel like this is a good idea. In fact, I think Barry's going to make things worse than they already are. But the team then heads upstairs to see a large crowd in the museum. We find a perfectly working Cisco Tor hologram. Cisco does pat HR in the back, and we found that even after his initial hesitation on the hologram, he actually went out to fix all of the kinks because he genuinely wanted this to work for HR. And I like that. I like the dynamic that Cisco and HR have. It's way different from what Cisco and Wells 2 had, but I like the where this is going, but the closing scene finds us back at Barry and Iris as the two have a housewarming party with the rest of Team Flash. Julian ends up showing with a bottle of wine. Team informs that they've actually decided that he can join the team, and I like that. I like seeing where Julian's going to go. It seems like he kind of fits in there, and Barry then goes on and apologizes to Joe in regards to his actions towards Wally. The previous day, as Julian and Cisco surprise Caitlin with a power-stopping necklace, Wells then basically gives a toast to Barry and Iris, and the episode closes as we see Gypsy travel through a portal. This was a very strange ending. I don't know where this is going, but we see Gypsy. She travels through a portal. She looks at a pocket-sized hologram of HR, so you know that definitely something is going down there. But that is the way the episode ends. Very interesting stuff overall. Let's just get into this episode and where I think we're going to go from here. So overall, this wasn't a terrible episode by any means. It just was a very low energy type premiere. There really wasn't a ton happening, really. I mean, they tried to have stuff happen, but there really wasn't anything that substantial. You know, Barry found out that there's a future in which Iris doesn't get killed. So what? Why does this matter? You know, why is this such a big deal? You know, they hinted the fact that Iris is going to get killed. Why does this even matter now? It doesn't really seem like it's that big of a deal because the future's just going to change anyway. Kid Flash can outrun the Flash. Oh my god, I really care. The only thing I genuinely care about in this episode is where Julian and Caitlin are really headed, because I like their overall storyline. Now, first of all, I like that they're not trying to get these two in a relationship, because that just wouldn't really make a ton of sense. I've never really seen these two as a relationship pairing. I've seen them more as friends, and I see them more as two people who are going through very similar circumstances. You know, Julian in the sense that he's a good guy, but he was working for the evil mastermind behind it all who was controlling him, and he really does regret that, and he feels a lot of guilt towards that, even though it wasn't all his idea, and that a lot of it was just manipulation of, you know, himself allowing himself to be manipulated. Definitely you can tell he feels a lot of guilt. And Caitlin, on the other hand, her having these powers that makes her do things that she can't remember, but has unforeseeable consequences. And both of those things really do scare them. So I'm interested in seeing if Julian is actually going to help her conjure these powers and find a way to finally eradicate of them. So that's something I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. I think definitely that's going to be a very interesting storyline. Barry and Kid Flash could definitely be interesting. I like seeing these two work together. I'm just not getting the sense this is a good team up. I don't really know if I'm really getting that sense that, one, Wally really needs him, two, that Barry isn't going to treat him like absolute shit, because it really seems like he is at this point, but again, we'll have to see where that goes. Julian joining the team, I think, is definitely interesting, and that's something I'm also very interested in, is seeing how Julian's really going to fit in, because right now I don't know how that's going to go, but I guess we'll have to see what happens there. I do like HR and Cisco. I like their overall interactions. I like that Cisco is kind of starting to dive a little bit more into his vibe. I like seeing that overall. I like the direction that is headed. But Savitar definitely is not gone. We know that Savitar is still out there, and Savitar is, in fact, that future is definitely going to happen in some way. I don't know if Iris is going to die, but definitely I think someone is going to die by the end of the season. I still think it's going to be Wally. I'm going to stick by that, because I just think Wally, he's going to, you know, cross the line a lot. He's going to disobey Barry a lot. If he keeps disobeying Barry I do think knows what's best for him. I think Barry really does genuinely want to help him, and if he keeps disobeying Barry, he's just going to get himself in more and more trouble. So I really don't see things going well for Wally. I see Wally really going overboard and really crossing that line, but again, we'll have to see where that goes. overall, guys, not a bad episode, but just again, a very low energy type premiere that I really didn't think was all that great. Aside from a few things with HR and that Caitlin and Julian storyline, if this episode didn't have that, this episode would have easily been a C plus. But because of those storylines, I am gonna give The Flash Season 3, Episode 10, barring problems from the future, a 3.5 out of 5 or a B minus. Guys, this show just really is not doing it for me right now. It's not because it's bad. I don't think it's a terrible show by any means. I just know the show can do a lot better, and it really seems like they're just not really utilizing things that well, and they don't really know, to me at least, it doesn't really seem like they know what to do with the show. They don't really seem to have any type of direction. It's really frustrating me because there are a lot of very interesting storylines that are going on, but the show just doesn't really know how to handle it as well. It really is playing it way too safe. I think it really is trying to be like season 1, but the show isn't willing to evolve and show how it's grown or anything like that. And because of that, it really is starting to affect the overall direction of the show. And slowly my interest in the show is waning dramatically, definitely. And if the show doesn't get its act together, I don't think I'm going to drop it altogether, but it definitely is going to lose me if it keeps going in this very piss poor type direction that it is. But over, guys, my review this episode of The Flash. I know you guys saw this episode overall. Are you enjoying the season or not? I know a lot of people have turned away, and I honestly am really starting to see it, but that's this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.